Hey everybody, what is going on? Hexlex here. I got another Master Duel video for you. So I wanted to take some time to talk a little bit about Ryzeal. At the time that this video is going out, it's been a few days since the Ryzeal selection pack dropped in Master Duel. At the time I'm recording this, it's still actually day one, but I've been playing quite a bit off screen after my initial first few live games that I showed the other day. So I wanted to talk over some of the games that I had, mostly mirror matches, and talk a little bit about this meta. Because I know last time I talked about the meta with Malice, I was really not a fan of it. I gotta say though, I am liking Ryzeal mirror matches a fair bit more than I'm enjoying, or than I rather did not enjoy the Malice ones. So I want to get into that a little bit. Before I get started though, huge thank you to everybody who supports by becoming a channel member here on YouTube. Gotta give you all shout outs because one, that support is great, especially for smaller YouTube channels like myself, but two, also those folks did get to see all of this Ryzeal content before it went live, in some cases even a few days before it went live. So if you want to see videos early and or help support the channel, make sure to join as a member next to the subscribe button below. But anyway, as far as the Ryzeal meta goes, I've had quite a few games, and you're gonna see a couple of them here in this video that have been felt extremely back and forth. Sometimes it does come as a result of both, my opponent and I not really having starters in our hands. Actually, kind of like this game here, I'm kind of struggling to get a starter while I take this beating from my opponent's Ryzeal detonator. Until it is, I top deck the X Ryzeal, and then we have a very fun chain link that's coming up here. But yeah, I've actually had quite a few games like this where it's been fairly back and forth, while playing a Ryzeal mirror match, and that has honestly been awesome. I've thoroughly enjoyed that. Again, more so than the Malice mirror matches. And I already touched on this in my video about Malice, but I wanted to kind of reiterate the point here, because I know I'm going to get people asking in the comments, so what is the difference? Why do you like Ryzeal mirror matches, but not Malice mirror matches? Because Ryzeal is the more powerful deck between the two, and a lot of people kind of don't really like that. Some people also don't like how Ryzeal is more of a simple combo deck as opposed to a longer form one. This idea that long form combo decks have more skill expression, I'm not going to make that argument either way. I do find longer form combo decks to tend to be more fun. But one thing I didn't really like about Malice mirrors was just the silver bullets, right? The Artifact Lancia, the Chaos Hunter, all that kind of fun stuff. It never felt good to obviously get hit with one of those, but it never really felt good to be using them either, right? Like, I don't enjoy beating Malice by resolving a Lancia against them. So I'm very glad to see that we're in a meta that, main decking Lancia is just not really viable anymore. It really makes me actually want to play Malice now, as opposed to last season where I avoided it like the plague. Basically, again, I like these kind of sort of punchy back and forth kind of games where the way you interact with your opponent really matters, again, as opposed to simply resolving the Lancia. Now, to be fair, I will say this, sort of, I guess, against Ryzeal, that a lot of the time, having hand traps doesn't always feel like it matters, even multiple, right? If your opponent opens a starter plus an extender, then even having, two hand traps with something like Valor, Imperm, or Ash Blossom, that's not really going to do a whole lot. But there are still a lot of situations where those hand traps can, one, stop the opponent from making plays, and two, really just matter, even if they don't, right? Well-timed negates, even if they don't fully stop your opponent's line, will still impact their overall end board. So I do think that it ends up being pretty important to play your hand traps well. It can be really... This comes up in a few different metas. It came up a little bit in Snake Eye as well, where a lot of people kind of feel like, or at least, I don't know, this is the impression I get from just seeing some of the comments that I see. It feels like some people, get very discouraged when having two hand traps doesn't completely stop your opponent's combo line. And I think as long as you're willing to let go of that, preconceived expectation and really focus on stunting your opponent's board as opposed to keeping it from being built up altogether, then I really think that that's the right mentality to get into. That's the approach I try to go into, right? Not can I stop my opponent altogether, and if not, it's a failure. It's more, okay, what can I stop them from doing? And I would consider even stopping one negate or one pop or one inboard piece a success in that regard. So But yeah, Ryzeal doesn't really have anything like an Artifact Lancia going against it, and honestly, even if it did, there is still the rest of the meta to consider, right? Obviously, like I said, Malice feels a lot better to play. You're not going to see as much Malice, in these first few days of Ryzeal being popular, and I think there's going to be kind of this false sort of notion going around that like Ryzeal is a tier 0 deck because it'll be so dominant, mostly due to new toy syndrome and because it is also just the best deck in the room. But after playing around with Ryzeal and playing the mirror matches and playing it against other decks, I don't feel like this deck is going to be tier 0. I think it'll probably be the best deck in the room, with Malice coming up in second, not too far behind, because I will say that this is a noticeable power level increase. The Ryzeal Malice, I think these decks do mark a shift in Yu-Gi-Oh's meta, where we are seeing a noticeable increase in the overall power level of the game. What else is there to say about Ryzeal? Again, it's day one, the day I'm recording this. One thing I have seen quite a bit of from my opponents is I've seen it multiple times, both in games that I've played and also in duel lives that I've watched, which we do that over on Patreon, by the way. Another way to support the channel, if you want to see exclusive video content that doesn't get posted here on YouTube, I post 3 or 4 times a week over on Patreon, and all those videos over there are, again, exclusive. None of it is shared content with any of their platforms. So supporting over there also really does help. And if you want to see some additional content, patreon.com/hexlex. Really appreciate the support there too. But for that channel, we were watching some duel lives, and one thing I saw a couple times there, and I actually again had this happen in a game of my own as well. I didn't really end up showing this because of the way the game played out, but I'll see opponents, or just Ryzeal players in general, add cross and plug-in, and then still not negate like a Nibiru. Like, I had a game where I turned one Nib to my opponent after they added cross and plug-in. They even activated the cross. This is the thing I always see. I see them activate the field spell, and then they just let the Nib go through. I will say it's maybe not the most obvious interaction in the world. There's not a whole lot of things that negate on resolution right now in Yu-Gi-Oh!, but yeah, definitely want to make sure that you are chaining the plugin. I guess one thing, to be fair, that might not be readily obvious with that whole interaction of, the cross negating on resolution is the fact that you can use plugin to attach a material to a Ryzeal Xyz monster that has 0 materials, and then, it'll have material on resolution so that you can use the cross effect on resolution. That's something that you really got to remember if you are playing Ryzeal, is to make sure that you are keeping that in mind. And of course, also keeping in mind that the Ryzeal cross can only be used on a Ryzeal Xyz monster. I've seen some people go into a different rank 4 with the field spell up and then just get hit with the Nibiru anyway, because I'm assuming anyway, because they thought the cross would be able to detach, but it's only from Ryzeal Xyz monsters. So as I mentioned before, the thing about Ryzeal that I think some people don't like is its simplicity. I saw people kind of come after MathMech for this too, where I don't think it's really weird. I mean, I don't know. Is it weird? People tend not to like when, a deck is obviously the best deck in the room. And, when that deck is a long form combo deck, you see a lot of people complain about how long the lines take and how hard it can be to pilot. But then when it's a shorter combo deck like Ryzeal is, or again, I remember this in MathMech coming up a bit too, then you get people saying, oh, well, the best deck in the room is so easy, takes no skill, that whole kind of spiel. But I don't know, there's a lot of nuances to playing Ryzeal, and I mean, as with any deck, a lot of the nuance comes in playing the grind game, but I find that when I play Ryzeal, I get into grind game situations more often than I did, or than I do playing other decks in recent times, except for something like Fiends with Control, which is obviously a control deck. Ryzeal does kind of feel like it has control-ish aspects. Dare I call this mid-range? Well, I feel that word's kind of weirdly used in Yu-Gi-Oh! I don't feel like it has a consistent definition, but for what I think of a mid-range deck, sure, I guess you could call Ryzeal a mid-range deck. But no. I really like the way that it plays overall, I think. Not just against itself, but against, other decks in general, just the overall play style. One thing that I do think might become a bit apparent with Ryzeal meta is just how good the deck plays against itself. And what I mean by that is that I don't think Ryzeal inherently, like within its engine, plays well against itself, but it's more of the fact that, you know, you're going to need a lot of hand traps to stop Ryzeal. And if you're going to want to stop Ryzeal consistently, you're going to need to see a lot of hand traps consistently. And when I think about decks that have the most amount of room for hand traps, Ryzeal is actually up there. You know, you play 14 one-card starters, which is a huge amount for, you know, any modern Yu-Gi-Oh deck for consistency boost. But on top of that, you only have 5 one-off, you know, non-starters that you play in Engine. So that's a very low amount for a lot of decks. I'm talking about purely within Ryzeal cards. Well, I guess with the starters, with 14, I'm also counting Bonfire and 7th Tachyon and 7th Ascension. But I guess my point is that, you know, Ryzeal is a deck that has a room for a ton of hand traps, and decks that can play and consistently open a ton of hand traps are going to be good in a meta where Ryzeal is prominent. So in that regard, it's almost a bit of a cyclical feedback loop where Ryzeal is really good against itself, well, better against itself, I should say, than a lot of other decks tend to be. Therefore, that's all the more reason to play it when it's already considered to be one of the stronger decks in the room, right? So in that regard, I could see a situation where we end up in a meta where Ryzeal does kind of snowball a bit. It does have Malice to challenge it, and while I still think the move, I mean, here's the thing. When it comes for practicality from the player's standpoint, the correct move was to always release Ryzeal and Malice at the same time. But obviously from, you know, a corporate standpoint, from Konami's perspective, they were never going to do that. They're going to make you double down into 2 different packs, right? So I will say, like, you know, at the very least, Malice is here to challenge Ryzeal so that it's not just the best deck in the room, but that only came after a month of Malice just being the best deck in the room. But if it had been the other way around, where we had gotten Ryzeal last month and then Malice now, I don't think Malice would have had as big of an impact. So I see why they released it in the order that they did. That said, I think the month of Ryzeal being the most dominant deck in the room and nothing but Ryzeal mirrors would have been more fun for me personally than the month we had of Malice mirror matches. It's like it's like I said before. Artifact Lancia just ruined like, if not for Artifact Lancia and Chaos Hunter, I actually do think that Malice mirror matches could have potentially been interesting. But the other problem that I guess Malice mirror had against itself is the fact that Malice is not great going second, but Malice also puts up an overwhelming number of you know, resources to fight against going first. So at the end of the day, you end up in a situation where whoever goes second in Malice Mirror, even if neither player is on something like Lancia or Chaos Hunter, still is just going to tend to feel worse for the going second player more often than not. Whereas with Ryzeal, it does feel a lot more back and forth. So I don't know. That's just kind of where I stand, as opposed to how much I like Ryzeal and what I think of it, you know, in this meta so far. All in all. But again, I'm saying this on day 1. This is going out on day, I think, 4 of the metagame, 3 or 4, something like that. So I am interested to hear what you all think in the comment section below. As far as other decks I'm considering playing into this Ryzeal meta, like I said, I think if you're going to be playing hand traps, you want to be playing a lot of them. So Fiends with Control, I think, continues to be quite good for that reason. Fiends with Control, I think, is always just going to be, I don't know about always, but I think for quite a while is going to remain like a lower tier 1, upper tier 2 deck, just for its sheer flexibility, right? It's got the backbone of a great engine, and it can play so many hand traps that it can very easily switch up what it is playing in order to best counter the meta in terms of its hand traps, whether or not it includes the Primite engine, so on and so forth. Like, yeah, Primite for drill beam stuff might not have been that great in theory last season, but I think it is at least a bit better this season. Especially given that it banishes and Detonator can't inherently protect from that. Let's see, Droll and Lockbird, I think, is another great card into the Ryzeal metagame. Obviously, especially with all the different Searchers and 7th Ascension for 7th Tachyon. So as a result, any deck that can main deck 3 Droll and Lockbird and not be affected by it is going to really, really benefit from that. not just from them being able to play their own Droll and Lockbirds, but also there's going to be a lot of Droll and Lockbirds running around in this meta. I've seen a few Ryzeal builds that are playing 3 Droll and Lockbirds to counter the mirror, and I don't think that's bad. I'm playing one in my build, which I'll show at the end of this video, as a means of, a cross-out target, but I have considered playing at least 1, if not 2 more copies, just to counter other Ryzeal decks. It's not to say Ryzeal can't do anything at all under Droll. For example, if you open Ice Ryzeal and you get Drolled, you could at least still make a detonator, but the Droll and Lockbird is pretty rough. The one thing I will say that I think I don't like as much about Ryzeal in terms of how the games tend to play out is that it does a little bit more than Malice and other decks kind of feel a little bit more like, okay, did I get my 1-card starter? If not, just pass with a bunch of hand traps until I get it. And we have had a couple of instances of that in some of the games shown here, but again, even in a situation like that, it at least tends to lead into more of a grinding game. It can be very frustrating when the only thing that's holding you back in a duel is your inability to get a starter. That I have definitely felt in some of these games, but it's at least not, again, as bad as something like Lancia against Malice, where it doesn't really matter if you got lucky, if you played well, you just simply can't do anything at all, right? So even if Droll is a hard counter for Ryzeal, I'm grateful it's not nearly as bad as Lancia. That again was my main hang up for the Malice format. So the fact that this format is offering more interactiveness definitely makes me feel a little bit more open to it. Yeah, with this triple attack, we'll easily put back our opponent's Valor. Those nibs do not matter because we can simply play around it by going in duo drive, and yeah, our opponent realizes that, so looks like they're just going to go ahead and concede here. Alright, so let me go ahead and show off the build here, and ultimately I think that is going to do it for this video. This is actually still the same build that I showcased on day 1 as well. So, if you were following along with that video, it's still the same list, and I've been liking it quite a bit. It is still day 1, of course, today I'm recording this, but I think a list that looks like this will do well going into the future as well. Again, the only thing I'd really consider changing is the hand trap ratio and which hand traps I'm playing and all that kind of stuff, but that's going to go ahead and do it, so why don't we just move on to our outro. Hey everybody, Hexlex here. Thank you so very much for watching all the way to the very end of the video, which by the way is one of the best ways to support the channel. Speaking of supporting the channel, take a look at the names on screen. These are folks who have been so generous as to either join as a YouTube member or subscribe over on patreon.com/Hexlex to support. There's also perks for doing so. If you would like to see YouTube videos early, as well as some exclusive videos that get uploaded to YouTube, but for one reason or another I decide not to publish, definitely go ahead and hit that join button to see content early, as well as some exclusive content. If you're looking for more exclusive content, over on patreon.com, I upload exclusive videos that are not posted on YouTube just about every single day. Whether you choose to subscribe over on Patreon, join as a YouTube member, or simply continue to watch, your support is greatly appreciated. Thank you so very much. But for now, this is Hexlex. I am signing out, and I hope that you have a fantastic day.